Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our yellow sheet out where we have already written down information about perimeter and area, and today we are going to add that third piece about volume. So if you can do this in color if you want. I'm going to start with the definition just like we've done before. So volume, and if I go too fast, just go ahead and pause the video and catch up. Volume is the number of cubic units that fills the interior space of an object. Okay? And yesterday we were building some examples. We were building some rectangular prisms, and so you're going to be looking at some rectangular prisms in a little bit, but we were looking at the length and the width and the height. So I'm going to go ahead and write down my formula for a rectangular prism, because remember these are three-dimensional figures. Rectangular prism. And our formula for a rectangular prism is to take the length, multiply it by the width, multiply it by the height, and that will give us the volume. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangular prism in my notes. And so to draw a rectangular prism, I'm going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to kind of off-center another rectangle. And then basically I'm going to connect the edges on top first. I'm going to connect this one on this side next. And since this is supposed to be something that I really don't see, I'm going to give it that dotted line. I really probably should have given this back one a dotted line too, but I didn't think about it. And we're going to give it some measurements. So we're going to say that the length is 4 and that the width is 3. And then we're going to go ahead and call this the height, and we're going to call it 2. And so the one thing you need to remember is trying to find those 3 different dimensions that we're talking about, the length, the width, and the height. And once you find those, then it's pretty easy. All you have to do is multiply them together. So we can say 4 times 3 times 2 is going to give us the volume. And 4 times 3 is 12. And 12 times 2 is 24. And so then we get 24 cubic units, because it's 24 little cubes that would fill up the inside of this space. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and write V equals. The next thing that we need to put in our notes is information about what if I change out the length and the width for a capital B. What does that B stand for? So we talked a little bit about it on area, that sometimes when they have that lowercase b, they're talking about the base. But sometimes when they use a capital B in volume, they're talking about the length and the width already multiplied together. Already multiplied together. So sometimes they're going to give you a figure that already has the base calculated for you. So we're going to practice, or we're going to put that in our notes next. So I'm going to draw another rectangular figure. So I'm going to make another rectangle. I'm going to make this rectangle slightly off. And I'm going to go ahead and connect just like we did before. Okay, And anytime we have the base, well, we want to think about the bottom. So that would be this piece right here. And you don't really have to shade this in if you don't want to, but this is the base. This would be our first layer. And so if I go in and I give some measurements that go with this, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can say that this is 5 and this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the length and the width multiplied together, the base is equal to 20. And then it's the base that we would multiply by the height. And the height we're going to say is 2. Okay? So this would be the length, this would be the width. But it's the base that is already multiplied to give you that bottom layer. So another way to find volume is to take the base, multiply it by the height to get the volume. And in this case, our base has already been calculated. It's 20. And remember, you're getting that from 5 times 4. And we're going to multiply that by the height, which is 2. And so our volume now is 40 cubic units. 40 cubic units. Okay? All right, so don't let that base throw you off. It's actually just making your job easier when they give you the base. And finally, we have our cube. So the one thing you have to remember about a cube is it's just really made up of only squares, and we know that squares have all the same sides, so a cube is going to have all the same measurement. In that case, we would use the side times side times side formula to help us figure that out, which is really just the length times the width times the height. So boys and girls, if you really wanted to just not confuse yourself, just know the one formula, length times width times height, is really going to be the easiest one to remember, because they're all going to give you the answer. The only thing you have to be careful about is when the base has already been calculated, then we only need to put it with the height. But back to our cube. So I'm going to make a square face this time. And then I'm going to make another square face, and I'm going to connect these. And I'm going to go ahead and label this 2, 2, and 2, because all the measurements would then be the same. And if we were looking at, focus that in just a little bit more. If we're looking to calculate the volume of this cube, we would say 2 times 2 times 2 is going to give us the volume. And it's really easy for boys and girls to go 2, 4, 6. It's not 6. So be very careful and aware that it's 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. And so it's 8 cubic units. So now we have completed our note page for area, perimeter, and volume, and I want to encourage you to keep up with this, because this is kind of like your little go-to information. So keep this in your blue folder, and we might be able to use it on our test, or I know we will definitely be using it on any work that we're doing in our classroom. It's just a quick reference sheet. So put this in a safe place.